Polycell, you said you've gotten stuck turning. What got stuck? Did the walk stop working? Spinning indefinitely. Huh, interesting. Okay, well, I'll get a little more time to poke it around at that stuff the next couple days and probably know more about it then. But just curious if people had run into similar issues. I know there are some AOs that are doing dubious things. I don't know if there are issues that are not AO related, other than the looping thing that made it mention. So I don't know. That's about all that's going on here right now. We've been doing some work on trying to get the rendering cost calculations updated. I know there's some JIRAs that have been reported against that, and we're hoping to make the calculations a little more accurate in the future. But that's not in a shipping state yet. Other things are a little farther down the road. How are things going in Avatar and content creation land? Any new issues or cool stuff going on? That's for the plugin thing you've been working on? Oh, nice. Yeah, real life's very considerate that way. All right. Well, we may be setting a new record for short meetings. Is anyone updating the Bento wiki page? I hope that we will get a chance to update it at some point. Nothing new since the last meeting, though. Server-side baker feature is applying the bakes to meshes. We've had a couple of other proposals that also involved something with the server-side changes. Yeah. Nothing really new. That's on the short list. I hope that we'll get a chance to look at it in the not too distant future, but it's not currently in progress. Not any definite decision on it, but I think it's clear something that has a lot of pluses associated with it. Would let us improve content efficiency a bunch of different ways. Hey, Aki.
I will talk a little bit about this gun I'm twirling around here. I had a client who wanted a gun that could do tricks and stuff. And initially, they of course wanted it to be completely rigged. But I tried to explain to them I can't really know where the hand's going to be if I rig the gun. So, but I did up a test for them anyways, just to show them it can't work. And of course it didn't work. But in this gun, I'm just animating the attachment point. But because everybody wants to call everything bento, we can still call it bento because the hand is animated. But this is also the same problem I'm having with the nunchucks and why I haven't really advanced with that yet. Because if somebody changes the body from the default of what I'm animating on, I don't know where their hands are anymore. So, and that's kind of important for nunchucks. Anyways, that's some tips on doing something like this, though. I'm just animating the attachment point.
So the problem is that, because the thing you're animating isn't actually a child of the hand, there's not any guarantee that it's going to track the hand unless you control all the animations.
Well, there's just no guarantee if they change the body that the hand is going to be in the same spot I thought it was going to be. So, and there's no way for me to know that. Because, wider shoulders, narrower shoulders are all going to change that distance in between where the hands are going to be. So if I do make like something like a nunchuck thing, I might do like a Bruce Lee thing where you can't change it at all. And this is just it. Or maybe you can just change the face. Who knows?
Yeah, that's a good point. Is there anything that could be done to improve that? I mean, we can't really change the hierarchy on the fly currently to, make your nunchucks be descendants of the hand or something like that. I know we've had some discussions about the constraint feature in animations, but it's sufficiently murky that I don't think we have any working examples of how to do that. I wonder if that would actually be something that could be applicable.
It's definitely interesting, but in the end, I think it's just a difficult problem,
Yeah.
Animating attachment points, though, sorry, the dogs, that is kind of a solution, too, because you know where the attachment point is going to end up.
Say it again. You've got something where, if you animate the attachment point, then you can move whatever's attached to the attachment point, but then you're also moving the attachment point relative to the hand, right?
Yeah, but at least you know where that attachment point is going to end at. Whereas if I rig it with other bones, I have no clue where those two things are going to meet.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything to stop you from animating attachment points. The recommendation is to try to use attachment points in a way that's consistent with the design that they should kind of reflect the location of whatever they're the attachment point for. The old usage of taking the attachment points and just flying them around to wherever you want to make a tail or something, probably isn't as good because it doesn't really give a predictable experience for people who are trying to make attachments. But I don't think there's anything in the system that actually stops you from doing that. Let's see, I'm scrolling back a little bit. We had a question about how to create .anim animations. I think there's some work on tools to let you do that in Maya, but I'm not sure how far along that got. Let's see, is Kathy here this week? I'm not seeing Kathy this week. And I know that Avastar has some capabilities along those lines. Yeah, unfortunately, since anim is it's an internal kind of pseudo format, there aren't a lot of third-party tools out there that know about it. Okay, there, third option, polysales work for 3D Studio Max. It's not out yet though, is it? Yeah, we have had a request for a scripted method to position bones. I'm taking a look at the JIRA right now. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like there's some open questions about that. I'm not sure how that would interact with controls that are done through animations. Obviously, you've got to figure out, how to reconcile those. And you certainly couldn't do anything as complicated as what animations can do just because of the size limit on scripts, right? You can't make a script that's anywhere near as large as the specification for a really detailed animation. Um, and of course, if you could, there would potentially be a lot of extra overhead from having to keep sending that around, having to send stuff around to everybody as well. The nice thing about animations is it's somewhat compact. You can say, okay, I'm interested in this animation, and then it gets downloaded once and stored in your cache, and then you can just play it again as often as you want. Whereas if we're trying to do sort of real-time control with scripts, then there has to be a lot more data getting slung around, a lot more work on the back end. So I don't know. I guess I'm curious what the particular benefits would be. What does this let you do that you can't do with animations, and how can you how useful would it be if you inherently can't do anything that's as complicated as animations? Is there a use case for something that only lets you kind of move around a small subset of the bones? I think Avatar Puppeteering was a little more involved than that because it also involved IK, right? You want to be able to grab the hand and have the arm follow along behind it or whatever, whereas this scripted thing sounds like it's more just driving all of the bones explicitly. Admittedly, having to play dozens of animations is not exactly it's not exactly elegant either. Solves every misaligned object versus body part. Sorry, could you expand on that? I guess what I'm not clear on is how we know more at the time we're running the script than we knew at the time we generated the animation. I mean, do we have additional data that lets us kind of generate the right content on the fly? Okay, so the idea is that you're using this in the context of some kind of a visual tool. You're tweaking it to tell you to do whatever it is that generates the right visual result. So how does this interact with animations? Would you basically have a priority specified as part of the scripted request, and then it basically just gets run as if it was an anim of that priority showing up at the time that the script gets executed? Yeah, priority is really baked into the animation currently, which probably isn't ideal. It doesn't give you as much flexibility as something like that. Yeah. So is the typical use case going to be when you're kind of stationary and you're trying to tweak your position? It seems like if it's still playing the game basically the way that existing animations do, then it's kind of first come first serve, and if there are other animations running or whatever, they're going to stomp on the results that you'd get from running this scripted thing. Okay, so it's kind of fine level control for posing, in which case it could be okay if you can't move a lot of bones at the same time, and you don't really have to have another theory about how priorities work relative to existing animations, right? So how much would this be used? With anything that's kind of LSL driven, you always have to worry about the problem of either the server getting spammed with requests, or it just winds up generating a ton of traffic that's spamming the viewers with lots of requests. Typically you need to throttle it somehow so that it doesn't have the potential to blow out kind of limits on either end there. I mean, I don't want to say that you'd have people using it just to avoid paying the upload cost for animations, but you probably would. I mean, I realize that's not the intent, but I mean, once something's out in the world, you can't always predict what uses people are going to choose to make of it. Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about this kind of thing before. That modeling with external tools does raise the bar a lot in terms of complexity and how much you need to know to make things happen. All right. So for the scripted method of position bones, are there what existing tools should I look at? You mentioned AnyPose. There's Damien's Hand Poser. Anything else out there I should know about? Okay. Well, thanks for bringing that up again. I didn't really get the idea that we were trying to do posing with it before. It seemed like it was kind of redundant with the goals of the kinds of things you can already do easily with animations. The basic problem we have with a lot of these requests is just that it's a lot faster to generate good ideas than it is to implement them by a considerable factor. So, we've got the problem that it's pretty easy to come up with 5 years worth of work in a 1 hour meeting, and that doesn't that doesn't generate the requisite 5 hours. So, I appreciate everybody's patience, but it's. I do sometimes get an element of frustration, like, oh, why on earth haven't you done this, one obvious thing yet? And usually the answer is because there's a, pile of dozens of other obvious things in the queue as well. Yeah, we talked about that one last meeting. I mean, I don't think it's a crazy request, and if it makes people feel better, I can take it out of the unactionable pile and put it into the things I hope we can get to someday pile. But again, it doesn't generate more implementation time.
Any more talk about NPCs?
Oh, NPCs. NPCs are cool. I don't have anything new on NPCs. We've talked a bit about what some of the potential feature set would be there, and it's way up the list in terms of stuff that I hope we can get to, but I don't have any official announcements along those lines.
I want to try and get a copyright for Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee NPC doing nunchucks. Spreading philosophy.
How hard could that be? You just have to wait, I don't know, another 100 years for his copyright to expire, and I don't know, it could be a problem. We were talking about projects earlier today, earlier in the meeting. The thing I'm trying to get out the door right now is this asset fetching by HTTP, which I'm hoping will go to a project viewer real soon, but it's not quite out the door yet. And there's also some work that needs to be wrapped up on the data collection for updating rendering costs for avatars. Once we can get those things going, then I'm hoping to get on to some of the more interesting things we've chatted about in recent weeks. Asset fetch. Yeah, well, I mean, I've got a working viewer that needs to be QA'd. I've got a working sim update that needs to be QA'd, and then there's a little bit of kind of web magic that has to happen too, so that the requests for assets to the asset servers will actually go through correctly. So there's some folks on the ops side that have to look at that. So as far as I know, the development work is done on that. It's more on the QA and operations side. It's always possible some additional bug will come up, but yeah, that's what I mean by real soon. Yeah, the updated rendering cost is addressing. I mean, there's a couple of kind of broad areas of concern. One is that we haven't looked at this in quite a while, and there have been some changes introduced since the last time we did the calculations. In particular, the materials stuff isn't really reflected in rendering costs. We don't really know the impact of normal maps, specular maps, that kind of thing, and it would be good to get some kind of a cost estimate for that stuff. We also have some known bugs with our current rendering cost, which causes things to be, sometimes overestimated or underestimated quite a lot relative to their real impact, and so we're hoping to get that a little more aligned with reality. I think there's a close to the camera focused on res before other things. I don't know a lot of details on that. I know there was some work on the way we handle interest lists, which is the kind of tool that's used on the back end to figure out what stuff you should be sent first. And at one point that was cleaned up quite a bit to try to make sure that things you were looking in the direction of got resolved more quickly, and things that were closer got resolved more quickly than things that were farther away. But exactly what the current behavior is and how consistent that is, I can't really comment on. Question about fixing the miscalc on worn mesh. Sorry, could you elucidate which miscalculation are we trying to fix there? You say we are calculating the LOD on the bounding box of the avatar. I don't know. Most of the judges I've seen have been the other way around, where we're calculating on a sort of a notional bounding box that doesn't really correspond to the size of the object at all. Don't you want it to be LODing at the bounding box size? Oh, okay, so the concern is that you're treating it as if every object is the size of the bounding box, regardless of how big it actually is relative to the bounding box. Yeah, oh, don't get me started on millions of polys rigged rings, but yeah. Yeah, well, changing that would break stuff. I mean, there's two questions. One is, what LOD things get displayed at, and the other is how you factor that into the calculations for the rendering cost. I'm really only looking at the second of those right now, so it's not by itself going to break anything, but it could make something be considered to be more expensive or less expensive than it is now, which could affect how some viewers would see it. Yeah, there are various questions about what the actual LODing behavior should be too, and when you should swap among the various LODs, which hopefully all exist, but sometimes of course don't. I'm looking at 40665 now. If that's based on Firestorm, I know that they use a different uh, convention uh, for what LODs to draw. There's a couple of scale factors that can be used to set at what point you transition. So you're not necessarily going to see the same behavior in SL as you would with Firestorm. Yeah. Okay, thanks. I'll take a look at that one. So a question here about exporting a bento animation as BVH from Blender and importing it without Avastar. Anybody? Oh, okay, we've got at least one person who's done it. Does anybody know how things are going with Avastar? Are they still in RC N for some value of N? Well, I'm not sure if I would say that we're getting work out of Avastar, but they're doing a lot of work and a lot of people are benefiting from it. Oh yeah, Matrice did a ton of work on the sliders and also the skeleton design for Bento. Hope we'll see him around here again one of these days. Last I heard, he was just heads down on coding. All right. Well, I guess we're about at time. We should probably wrap it up for this week. Let's see if I'm doing the math right. It will still be this month next week, in which case we will be having another meeting then. All right. We'll see you all then. I hope we'll have the asset fetching thing out the door by then, and we can move on to new cool stuff.